Today, we're very fortunate to be speaking with a lady named Sunny Mills. Now, these introductions always seem interesting to me because we're having a heavy subject that we're talking about. We're talking about the LA wildfires. It's our series where we meet with people and talk with people affected by and supporting the fires. And we're going to be following up with them every few months for the next couple of years to see how things are going along. But to open up an intro with, hey guys, or something like that, it just doesn't seem right. But at the same rate, you want to see some positivity in light of everything that's a heavy topic that we're going to be talking about. And Sunny's story has both. It has that heavy topic to it. You can see how it's affected her, but it's also a way for her to reflect, as you're going to hear from her side and how she's developed and nurtured her project with tintype photography. So without further ado, we hope you enjoy this episode. Well, thank you for sitting with me today, Sunny.
Thanks for
I
having me.
appreciate it. Let's start off like we talked about. What do you love about LA?
Well, there's a lot to love about LA. I mean, obviously, it has the most beautiful landscapes in the country that I've seen. One of my favorite parts, though, is just how much of a melting pot it is. It's like the most diverse city I've ever lived in. And I think that it just offers something for everybody, from artists to working class, to people that come here looking to start over. I think it's just a welcoming home for anybody and everybody, or it's sort of like maybe the ragtag people that didn't really fit in their small towns or their cities kind of come here looking for something exciting.
Is that how you came here from Milwaukee?
Yeah, sort of.
Okay.
Yeah. I kind of felt that I hit a creative ceiling there and I wanted new opportunities and I wanted to start fresh. So I sort of just packed up my car and I drove out here in 2019.
What kind of car, if you don't mind me asking?
I have a 2003 Toyota Highlander.
Same one that you drove out?
Mhm.
Well, no, it wouldn't be too. Yeah, it would be. Yeah. Don't ask me
Yeah,
why I'm
that's the
brain farting.
car. I actually bought it the year I bought it a few months before I moved here and that thing's been really good to me.
So from Milwaukee, what would you take? The 70?
Yeah, I drove right through the middle of the country through Nebraska, Denver, Utah, Nevada,
Did you stop
straight
along the
shot.
way or you just came?
I think it took me a few days.
Okay.
Yeah, I stopped and sightseed. I've actually driven across the country in that particular vehicle about 5 times since I've lived out here.
Damn, that's like an ad for Toyota.
Yeah,
And it's hold up good?
I could really sell
Wow.
the Toyota Highlander if you want to know. That car's been really good to me, and it's 20 years old now.
Yeah.
21 years old. Never really given me any issues.
That's pretty cool. I mean, so when you drove out here, did you have a place to stay already? Or
I had a 2-month sublease arranged, sublet.
how'd you find that?
A family friend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I came out here, stayed for 2 months, and then I ran into a friend who was originally from Milwaukee, who had moved out here a couple years earlier. We met up for coffee very casually,
Uh-huh.
and she's like, "Hey, I found a spot. I need a roommate, a third roommate. Do you want to move in?" And it was the most synchronous thing because I was just about to start looking for a place and was feeling stressed about it. So it was like one synchronicity after another that first year that I lived here, whether it was living scenarios, work,
Yeah.
meeting friends.
Well, because you're putting yourself out there. I feel like
Yeah.
that kind of happens when you start putting yourself out there.
I moved here very
Yeah.
like open and wide-eyed and just like accepting any new experience. So I think everything sort of presented itself to me.
There's a lot of new experiences out here.
Yeah.
I like what you said about a place where some people can come to start over.
Mhm.
It very much is that kind of spot. And I feel like you could even start over here multiple times, right? Very Benjamin Button type. You
Totally.
know what I'm talking about? The end of the movie when he's younger but older and he talks about how he's talking to his daughter, how he says,
Mhm.
there's no rhyme or reason or no, rules to this. You can do whatever you want at any time.
Yeah, I
That's what it
think
made
that
me think of
that
that.
is how our life is. I think
Yeah.
that we get caught up thinking it's not like that, but it really is. You can kind of change the direction at any moment if you want to.
I read because, when especially when you're scrolling through any social media platform, there's always stuff, but there's always nuggets too, depending upon what you're looking at.
Mhm.
But I read something similar recently that said something about it's the past is a memory, the future is our imagination, right? So
Mm,
we're getting in our own ways most of the time when we're doing what we're doing,
yeah. The present is all we have control.
right? And I mean, I know those are cliches and hokey, but it's Super relevant.
Yeah,
I
they
think
come from.
especially with your situation.
Hmm.
So what did you move to Altadena, or was it
Um,
when you came here from Milwaukee? Was it Altadena first, or where were you at?
no, I first landed in Studio City,
Okay.
and then I was in El Sereno for almost a year until quarantine started.
Okay.
And I was supposed to be in that home until August, but the people we were renting from wanted their house back because they were out of town on a residency and quarantine ended their residency. So they basically kicked us out of our house. So I am no stranger to being displaced. So I actually went and I moved to my friend owned land in Utah in a ghost town. So I went and I lived on a school bus that was turned into a little makeshift living structure. And I lived in this ghost town for 6 weeks. And we worked on building projects every day. And we just like sort of sometimes I would just kind of go walking out into the desert. We just sort of did little projects and it felt like the world was ending, but also it was very isolated and kind of a good time, good place and a good time to be during quarantine.
So you had fond memories
I have fond
during that
memories during those six
ambiguous
weeks. Well,
times.
I
Yeah.
would say that there was a little bit of tension.
Okay.
There was like sort of a slightly hostile neighbor, an adjacent landowner that was
Okay.
harassing us a little bit. My friend had ran an artist residency program there,
Okay.
and I don't know if this guy is like kind of conservative and didn't like all the queer shenanigans that my friend was up to and sort of was harassing us for a while. Like, I don't know. It was just, it's kind of that's another long story.
It
But
sounds like.
I stayed there for 6 weeks, and then the next artist resident came, and I was like, it's time for me to move on.
Okay.
Um, so then I went back to Wisconsin, went to my dad's house for a while. As I was driving home is when George Floyd happened
Uh-huh.
and everything. The protests started happening. So once I got back to Wisconsin, I was going down to Milwaukee and joining marches that were going on there. And after a couple weeks, one of my friends said, "Hey, there's this group of activists marching from Milwaukee to Washington, D.C. Do you want to go?" And I was like, you know what? That sounds like a really great thing to do with my time right now because I didn't want to be in Wisconsin. I felt displaced during quarantine, COVID. So we joined this group. It was about 25 Black activists. Well, they weren't all activists. A couple of them were, but there was like women and children and families. It was
Uh-huh.
just like this group of people, and they were going to march 750 miles from Milwaukee to Washington, D.C.
Okay.
for the Al Sharpton Get Your Knees Off Our Neck march that was taking place there.
Okay.
So we did that, and it was one of the most beautiful and traumatizing and life-changing experiences of my life.
Okay.
Um, I would say we started the march, we left Milwaukee and we marched down through Chicago and got through Gary, Indiana, and everything was pretty peaceful up until that moment. And then once we started getting into rural Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, we experienced a lot of racist people coming out of the woodwork and harassing our group. And they were, I think, following mainstream news stories that were saying Black Lives Matter is coming to your town, board up the windows. And we were just a group of peaceful marchers, peaceful protesters, walking very civilly through town. And we were met with a lot of animosity. Pickup trucks driving by, blowing plumes of black smoke at us, throwing stuff out the windows, yelling stuff. Um, the farther we got, the more intense it started getting. In Pennsylvania, a man came out of his house shooting a gun. One of our marchers got sprayed with buckshot. Chaos ensued. My friend is actually working on a documentary about it, and she's looking for funding still and really hopes to tell the story because it was really crazy. But we ended up getting to DC after about 4 weeks, got to the march. Three people on our march got onto the podium and got to speak at the march. So that was really cool. And then everybody kind of dispersed. And me and my friend went back to Milwaukee. And then I received a phone call from two of my best friends living in LA. And they said they needed a subletter for their apartment because they were working on a feature film.
And this was in 2020
This
still.
is in
Yeah.
2020. So I was gone from about May, and I came back in about October.
Uh-huh.
And then I just subletted
Yeah.
my friend's apartment for 2 months, and then I moved to Altadena in 2021. So 2020 was a whirlwind of a year for me, and then
Yeah.
I came back and I finally landed softly in the beautiful town of Altadena that I love so much.
Just to touch on your story, especially the Ohio portion, because I lived in Dayton for a little bit,
Mhm.
because in my former life I used to race dirt bikes, and there was a race we were at in the east portion of Ohio. Mind you, there's a lot of wonderful people I met in Ohio, but I experienced something very similar. It was a race. It's called an enduro race,
Mhm.
and so you're going through the woods, and there was a portion, and you're very isolated during this, even though it's a race. There's a was a portion where there was a scarecrow style colored person hanging by a noose with a
Oh,
sign said, "This
no.
is what we do to a derogatory people around here." I'm racing, and I didn't
That's
know I
scary.
was like, yeah, I was scared. I was genuinely scared. I'm like, what? And this was what, 1999 at the time,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking, because I was, from California. I was younger, but I was still old enough, and I traveled a lot. But I was,
It's
it
another world out there.
right. It really was. I still can't necessarily place the words properly. You know what I mean? Because it didn't seem like it should exist at that point in time,
Yeah.
or I mean, should it have
I
ever?
mean,
But
nobody really thinks about it, and that's the thing is nobody's talking about it. It's not until the situation is
yeah,
presented and, you know, like people of color are in these communities that they're not welcome and they wouldn't realize that because everyone just lives in their bubble and they don't like change and they don't like
yeah, yeah,
outsiders and it's all very real. There's still sundown towns in this country to this day.
yeah. No, I mean, I've experienced it a little bit in my own way, from a Hispanic point of view. But yeah, yeah, it was when you said that, it made me think of that time that, I had like this,
Yeah.
not a pleasant one, but like a full house montage in my head of
Yeah.
that moment. And so I just remember it, especially, certain towns and areas. But yeah, that in itself is, you're right, its own story. So you're in Altadena 2021.
Yes.
And so is this a permanent residence, or at least in your mind? And you were doing set dressing before this and into
Well,
this?
when I moved to LA, initially came here thinking I would do photography.
Okay.
And I had reconnected with a friend of mine who was out here, was a director, but was working as a production designer.
Okay.
So we connected and he started bringing me on to my first art department jobs. So that's how I got into the world. And it seemed like every job I'd work on, I'd meet another art department person who would maybe pass my name along and then I'd get a call from another person. So it kind of became this web of connections, and I just before about after about 6 months, I was just, like, working all the time. So it was pretty cool. I was like I didn't really do much photography then, I just started working art department jobs all the time.
Good pay scale?
Um, I mean, for me, it was exciting coming, I was when I left Milwaukee, I was freelance photographer and bartending, and I had left a career in the medical field behind actually
I
in
saw
my
in
20s.
on your website it talked about what, cardiologist technician? Is that right?
Yeah, yep, I worked in a cardiac cath lab for 5 years. And then I had this awakening one day where I'm an artist. I need to pursue my artistic path.
Why do you say it in that tone?
I just was never told that I could follow what I felt good at. I was never encouraged to follow the creative path. So it just seemed like something you do as a hobby and not something you do as a career.
Because you went to school for the cardiology, right?
I did.
Side of things.
Mhm.
So when you had that, I guess you'd say a calling of it, it was more the empowerment. What was it? What kind of brought that on
Um, the people I was hanging around with were all artists,
in
and I
Milwaukee?
in Milwaukee, yeah, and I actually had had a brick and mortar for about 2.5 years there. It
Okay.
was like a vintage store slash music venue slash art gallery that I ran with two gals, and I did that while I was working at the hospital, and I loved like the business side of it, and I also loved the creative side. I was connecting with the community, doing like workshops with teens, and
What year was that?
This was 2013 to 2015.
Okay. I'm just trying to place that time and
Yeah.
era, right?
And then
That
2015, I quit my job in the hospital and I worked for my friend's clothing company for 2 years. They had a business making kids' clothes.
okay.
So I was a seamstress for them. So I was sewing clothes
Okay.
and then I bartended at night and then I was doing photography here and there. I've always just been like doing a lot of different creative avenues. I haven't, people have always said, you need to focus on one thing, just get really good at it. And I never felt that I could do that. There's a lot of stuff I like to do.
Well, there's also the reality, right? Like we would love to like throw ourselves into something, but you still got to make a living.
Right.
So how do you balance both? And so if you're able to get to a place where you're able to do something creative
Hmm.
and make a living,
It
which
felt very far off
yeah.
for me to be able to do that. So I kind of was always just hustling with all these side jobs and little little things I was learning, little skills and trying to make money with those. Um,
And so you found that pretty much, right, when you started getting paid to do the set design, or would you say it was just
yeah,
part of that path?
I kind of started doing it in Milwaukee. I
Okay.
had some friends that I would help on music videos. Kind of started off doing a little bit of wardrobe and then a little bit of set design for some short films. And I start was like, I really like this. I think I might want to enter the film world. And then I went through some life-changing stuff and realized that I needed to leave Milwaukee because I just there wasn't a lot of opportunity there for me. I kind of reached this like ceiling. I was like, I know everybody, nobody's hiring me. I wasn't getting the opportunities that I craved and I needed a challenge. So I just packed up. I didn't really think it through that deeply. I was just like, I've always wanted to go to California. I'm going to LA. So I packed up my car
Yeah.
and I drove out
In the Highlander.
in the Highlander.
Highlander. So going back to 2021, you're finally in Altadena.
Yes.
You are working at that time.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the pandemic's let up enough. You're working.
Yeah, I started working again as soon as I came back to
Okay.
LA. I started getting hired again, and, I would say less as a set dresser, I started getting work as prop master,
Okay.
set decorator, so I kinda started elevating my skill level a little bit and was getting better jobs, more exciting jobs,
Okay.
and
What would
found
be a
this
more exciting job, for example? Just I'm curious.
I don't know, like a really fun, creative music video that's really elaborate. Like I worked on that Adele "I Drink Wine" music video.
Oh,
That was
okay.
like $1 million music video. That was the biggest, probably to date, project I've ever worked on, and I was actually a set dresser on that. Um, just stuff like that, or working with artists that I was a fan of.
And so like the Billie Eilish piece that you worked on, that was that an editorial
I
piece?
believe so.
Okay.
I believe so. I think was that an album cover or perfume or something? I don't remember exactly what that was.
Because I also saw on your website, even as recent as 2024, you worked on an Eminem video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a set decorator for that.
Okay.
Um, and I actually I took a lot of my work stuff down off my Instagram because I wanted to like sort of dial in my tintype skills and just maybe pursue focus on that a little bit more. But I've had the chance to work on some pretty cool projects. And like I said, I met Tyler. Did a little that wasn't a music video though, that was an ad. Tyler,
Tyler
the
the
creator,
creator.
yeah, that
Okay.
was like a Le Fleur collab,
Okay.
and that was really cool. I've always been a big fan of his, so to meet him was, like, a really special moment.
And what time? When
Um,
was that?
I think that was either late 23 or
Okay.
early 24.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't that long ago.
No, not at all. So you were living in Altadena that whole time
Mhm.
from that point on in the same
Yes,
house?
not the same house, but with the same landlord.
Okay.
When I first moved to LA, I used to spend my off days driving around and exploring the city.
Okay.
And one day I found Altadena because I found this thrift store called Daisy. I love like small town thrift stores. And I
Okay.
drove up there and I saw the mountains right there. And I like found unincorporated coffee and I was like, what is this magical little nook? And I vowed then and there that someday I will live here. And that was like the first couple months I lived in LA.
Okay.
So 3 years later, there I was. 2 years later, there I was. Found a spot in Altadena, and then once I moved into my second spot in Altadena, I really felt that I had finally found a home.
Oh, that's
There was
cool.
like my time when I first got here being in a sublet and then this short-term place and then being displaced over COVID, leaving LA for 6 months, coming back, subleasing. I just felt like I was in limbo for years. I
Yeah.
felt like I was in LA, but I wasn't really home. I was just sort of like in these temporary spots that were, I always knew that I couldn't fully unpack or I was like waiting for something. And when I found this place, it felt like it felt like home for the first time in years since I had lived here. So I was really excited about that. I had a little studio space and I I just had like plans for this property. I started gardening and I was just thinking as long as I'm in the city, I want to live here. So it just felt really good.
That's awesome. Yeah, my missus gardens, so I know more about it than I ever thought I would, but I have an appreciation for it.
Mhm. It's hard gardening out here.
Yeah,
It's like
it
the
is.
soil is something else, I
You,
tell you.
you got
It's
to work it.
You got to work it.
You
It's
got
too
to bring
dry.
in. Yeah, she makes a she uses a lot of compost piles. Like she learned how to make
Mhm.
her own flower beds using a lot of the, you know, like the
Yeah.
coffee grounds and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
that's important.
so you're there living, you're finding your place,
Mhm.
and then take us to when the fire hit you.
Sure. So I guess so right before the fire happened, I had
Okay.
gone home to visit my family over Christmas,
Okay.
and that's a tradition I just started like last year because I hadn't typically been going home for Christmas, but I thought it would be good to start doing that. So I was out of town until January 3rd. I
Okay.
was gone for about 2 weeks, and I got back and I was kind of just still unpacking, getting settled in, and um, starting to plan some tintype shoots. I had recently gotten a new to me 8x10 camera,
Mm-hmm.
large format camera, um, and I had used it one time on a shoot. Actually, I used it really technically about 3 times, but once in like a studio shoot,
Mm-hmm.
and I was starting to reach out to people and I was setting up shoots and I was orchestrating things that I wanted to do. And I had big plans for my tintype business coming up,
Okay.
and I really wanted to lean into that more. Um, so, yeah, I kind of was just like writing stuff down in notebooks and like sketching and drawing stuff up. And then, let's see, the week of the fire, so Monday before the fire happened, I woke up that morning with a flat tire on my car,
Okay.
which is strange because the Highlander never gives me problems. But and normally I'll change my own tire, but I couldn't get the tire off. I had just gotten this tire put on in October, so I was really puzzled as to why I had a flat so soon. My insurance came and changed it, and they said there's nothing wrong with this tire. Someone overinflated it and it just blew out. So it was a really weird
Oh,
scenario.
okay.
So I'll have to take that up with my mechanic. But anyway, um, I got that fixed. And that evening, I went on a really nice walk. And I usually would walk up to the Millard Falls Road.
Okay.
Um, and I walked all the way up and saw the most beautiful sunset and sort of had this like blissful moment. And I felt really good about, what was coming, like the future. I was excited for my creative path. And I was looking at like the view of Altadena and LA. And I was walking home and I lost my house keys. I've never lost my house keys in my life, but somehow on this walk home,
Yeah.
my keys flung out of my pocket. And to me, that's some sort of strange omen for the next day. So I got home and realized my keys were gone. Luckily, my roommate was there, so it
Yeah.
wasn't a big deal at the time. But in my head, I'm thinking I'll just do that walk again in the morning and I'll find them. I'm sure they're somewhere on that route.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we had gotten reports of the windstorm approaching, but the news said the windstorm wasn't going to start until 10 a.m. So I thought I'll get up before the windstorm, as if they can predict that. And sure
Yeah.
enough, I was woken up at 3 in the morning by the winds that night. So very early Tuesday morning.
Which was the 7th, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So on the 7th, I am up and I'm looking outside in the morning and I'm like, there's no way I'm going out there. I'm not going to find my keys.
Yeah.
We have this large palm tree in our yard, and these fronds, these like 6, 8, 10-foot fronds are coming down like spears. Stuff's blowing out of our yard onto the streets. Like it was the most crazy windstorm I've ever seen. Our power goes out around 10 a.m. So me and my roommate, I think we went out maybe to like a yoga class or something. We left the house for a couple hours. We came back, the power was back on, and kind of the winds had chilled a little bit. So we're just like going about our business, working on something at the house. And then the power goes out again, probably, I think it was around dusk. Around and I remember we were each kind of in our rooms, and I had put on Dune on VHS. I had this
Okay.
original copy of Dune that still in its original sealed packaging,
The first one.
the first
The one with
one.
Kyle MacLachlan?
Yes.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I had never opened it. I thought maybe I'll sell this someday. I don't know. But I decided to open it and watch
Okay.
it. I was like, why am I keeping this sealed? I need to watch this film.
Okay.
So I was laying in bed watching Dune on VHS when the power went out the second time.
Okay.
And at that point, it was dark out. And I'm laying in my bed on my phone, which is at like 50% battery. And I'm wondering what I should do. And I'm like, maybe I should just go to sleep or do something. I don't really want to leave. I don't know what to do. So maybe half an hour later, I received a phone call from one of my friends, and she said there's a fire in Altadena. She lived on the east side of Altadena and really close to Eden Canyon.
Okay.
She said there's a fire. You should think about evacuating. And I was really confused by that. So I went
Okay.
outside, and I went outside and I actually stood on top of my car and I could see the fire from my house, which is about 2 miles away. My home was on Figueroa Drive
Okay.
between Fair Oaks and Glen Rose.
Okay. I
So
know where
really
you're at.
close to
Yeah.
that cemetery on Fair Oaks. And as I'm outside standing on top of my car looking at the fire, another friend calls who lives in Altadena and says the same thing. And at that point, I'm looking and seeing the trees in my yards like swaying like hurricane style.
Yeah.
So I started getting really nervous and talked to my roommate. I'm like, yeah, we should definitely just start packing some stuff up. And we had a neighbors that lived in a back house, three sisters. So we alerted them. I think one or two of them were home. And
Okay.
we just showed them the fire. They're not English speaking.
Oh, okay.
So we were like, this fire, like you should pack and evacuate. So and this was about 7 p.m. So we had time, but when you're looking through, I had a headlamp that was half dead, so it was really dim, and
Okay.
I remember standing there looking through my bedroom, looking in my closet. I mean, like, I have all this stuff. What do I take? I grabbed like 5 of my favorite t-shirts,
Yeah.
and I did grab my birth certificate and like some important papers and like a box of my tintypes. I was sort of like not taking it that seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I remember confidently saying to my roommate, there's no way this is going to reach us. It would have to be catastrophic if it were to get this far. And like, look at how much neighborhood this would have to go through. Like, that's just not going to happen. The city, the firefighters, whoever is not going to let that happen. Um, and we both agreed that I was right.
Yeah.
um, so, I have 2 cats and my roommate has a dog. So we have our sweet little pets they were on high alert. They were all
Okay.
acting very strange. Like they knew something bad was happening, but I think maybe they were scared of the wind or something. So we just start grabbing some stuff very, very randomly. When I think back, I kick myself for not loading my car to the brim because we had the time. And I just, I thought the more I take, the more I'm going to have to put away when I get home. So really, I took about 2 backpacks worth of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
And your roommate, how much
same
did they
with my
take?
roommate. Yeah, I
Because you
mean,
both were loading in the Highland, or they were in their own
she
car?
she had her own car, so
Okay.
we both each separately took our cars. Thank goodness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think we ended up leaving the house around 9 p.m.
Okay.
I
That
went to
Tuesday night.
on Tuesday night, yeah, and at that point, I had heard about there was and I was on the Altadena Facebook groups,
Okay.
and someone had alerted about this weather watch app, I think that's what it's called,
Okay.
and that was an app that would show, like, where the fire was spreading, so in evacuation zones. So I'm watching this app and, I get to my friend's house and I'm just pacing all night. I'm like so nervous. I'm like, there's a fire going on. Should I go should I go home to like get more stuff? I felt very tense and anxious, and helpless. I'm like, there's nothing I can do. I just have to stay here and I guess hope for the best. Um, Really poor sleeping that night. I kept getting up and looking at the app, and it was spreading. At some point, the evacuation zone reached where we lived. I was texting with my roommate throughout the night, and I think at some point, maybe around midnight, I fell asleep.
Hmm.
And then I woke up around 7 and I looked at the app again, and there was a house on our block about 5 houses down with the fire emblem on it. And that's when I started panicking, and I called my roommate and I was like, I think our house is in danger. And around 8 a.m., I got in my car and I'm like, I have to drive home. I have to, if there's a chance our house is going to burn down, I have to get more stuff. Or I don't know what I was doing. I was just like, I got to go home. And I started driving back to Altadena and I get off the freeway and I am immediately barricaded. There's nowhere you can't even drive up. I got off on Lincoln Avenue
Hmm.
and it was barricaded right there. So I basically had to
Yeah.
just turn around. And at that moment, I received a phone call from my roommate who had just received a phone call from our neighbor who had gotten in and said, I'm so sorry, your house is gone. So at some point in late in the night, our house, our garage, our back house, and our other neighbor's houses were all burnt down. So I at that moment had like an outer body experience from the shock. I sort of felt like I lifted out of myself and came back in.
Hmm.
And I called my landlord and I told her, and I think I was just in shock. So I went and met up with my roommate and we just sat and watched the news all day and like cried and were just kind of in shock and dumbfounded by it
Yeah.
and couldn't believe it and pretty numb. And then the next day, Wednesday, no,
Tuesday, Wednesday,
so
then
the next
Thursday.
yeah, one day went by.
So Thursday.
Thursday, we're like, let's go to the house, we have to see this with our own eyes.
Right.
We drive back and we get about as far as Woodbury and we had to park and then walk the rest of the way. And it was just a hell zone. It was just the stuff was still on fire, smoldering, power
But you were
lines.
able to walk in?
Yes, we walked right in. This is before the National Guard arrived.
Okay. Because
There
they're
was
there
like
now, even.
there was like a police officer on the intersection of Woodbury and Fair Oaks just kind of directing traffic, but nobody said a word to us.
Oh,
We parked our car in the little liquor store parking lot. We walked up, and it was like the most post apocalyptic thing I've ever seen. Like wires coming down, cars, burnt up cars on both sides of the street. Like every other house is smoldering. I was just, my jaw was just dropped. I could not believe it. And we got to our house, and it's just leveled, just ashes left. Um, we both, we cried and dug around a little bit with hopes of finding anything, and everything was just turned to ash and char. There's like nothing left. So it was the most shocking and disturbing thing I've ever really witnessed. Um, so I've been staying with some friends. The friend's house that I evacuated that night is where I'm still currently staying.
really?
Yeah.
What's that like? I mean, yeah, what's that situation like for you?
Well, luckily, they are two of the most sweet and like comforting and best friends that I have. They've really caught me in this situation. And they caught me before. They're the same friends when I moved back to LA after COVID that I house sat for.
Oh, yeah.
So they just, they've really been my angels. And I'm so thankful for them. And they're allowing me to stay as long as I need to. which is really helpful because I've looked at the housing market and it's very bleak right now. So I don't really have a solid plan, but it's not something I'm thinking about too much at this moment.
Okay.
So I'm staying there, and I would say, for the first couple of weeks after the fire, like time just slowed down to like molasses. The days would go by and would feel like a week, or a week would go by and it would feel like a day. I was just really a strange experience.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to like free clothing drives and these drives to like gather supplies
Because
and
all you have are the shirts you grab in the two
yeah,
backpacks.
I literally had like nothing. All my possessions were gone. I really had an identity crisis.
Okay.
Um, because as an artist and as a film worker, I've amassed lots of tools and art supplies and a kit full of like a prop kit full of like all these antiques and decor and vintage linens. I've been a vintage collector and like was doing a little bit of reselling on the side. So, and I go estate sailing a lot. So I've just had tons of books and records. I'm just been a collector and curator of things throughout my whole life. And I wouldn't say that they're expensive things, but they're meaningful things to me.
Right.
And to have that all wiped away really makes you question who you are and think like I know that these things don't define me. Um but I've worked so hard to sort of build this life and to see how quickly it can be wiped away. So I had to do a lot of internal work of realizing that, my body is my home and this fire didn't take my creativity away. Um and I'm still grappling with that. I'm still dealing with this identity crisis. And I think that, you know, having knowing I was doing tintype photography,
Mm-hmm.
a few people had reached out to me and offered to donate some supplies and like tintype equipment to get me at least back on my feet doing that, like something I was very passionate about.
Because all of that
All of
is
that was
gone.
gone. Yeah, my whole everything, my art, my studio was in my garage. And I think that that might be where our fire started because on the top of our garage we had these spinning vents.
Mm-hmm.
They were like air circulators, I think, to release hot air, and I think that that would be a really good spot for some sparks to fly in. And it's my suspicion. I mean, it doesn't matter where it started, but
Because everybody around you too, their homes were gone.
my neighbor on one side, their home was not burned down.
Was it touched at all?
Um,
You know what I mean?
they're like the inside of their windows, like their blinds and stuff, were all melted,
Uh-huh.
and the interior of their house was like deeply smoke damaged. So right now it's all boarded up and fenced up and everything. Um, and the sad part about that is for the past 4 months, they've been working on a huge remodeling project. So
Oh,
they weren't even in the house. They were, spending lots of money, getting it because I think they had some water damage going on. So they were repairing that. Um, so their place is pretty much uninhabitable for at least 18 months, I think they said. So I feel just as bad for people whose homes are still standing and are completely uninhabitable as their home burned down because I feel like they probably have to get rid of all their stuff too.
yeah. We've spoken with a few that even though their homes are still standing, the smoke damage or just, yeah, it's destroyed it anyway.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to tear it down and they have to watch it be torn down. I don't know that it's any easier. I don't even, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I
how do you
think I think
articulate that thought?
visually seeing everything you've had reduced to ashes is probably a little bit more traumatizing,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the hurt that they're experiencing is probably pretty similar.
Yeah, because what you talk about, the things that you've curated a part of your life as an identifier, but it's what brought you joy.
Yeah.
So it's like, where's your joy?
And
But
it
you seem to be finding again, right?
Yeah, it's there's this part of me that's wonders how do I start over? Do I do I try replacing all the things I lost or do I just start new and find new things, because I'll go to a used bookstore and I found a book and I was like, I used to have this book, so I bought it. You know, it's a part of me is like, this is an opportunity
Mhm.
to start fresh, and maybe I'm more of a minimalist now. I do remember having a moment in the last year looking around in my garage studio thinking, man, I got a lot of stuff. What would I do if I had to move? I would have to get one of those really big U-Hauls.
Mhm.
Um, but I was like, oh, I'm never moving, so I won't worry about that. Um, but it does kind of make you think as humans what we actually need to be happy and what are the things that we just collect for security or just because we like our cogs in this capitalist machine. So it's forcing me to reevaluate my habits, and I've always been eco sustainably conscious
Mhm.
in that I try not to like buy plastic junk or stuff that I don't need. I try to just keep my waste footprint as minimal as possible.
Mhm.
And now I guess I have a chance to do that even more. So going to these free clothing drives and stuff, I just took very little, just like what I need to get by.
Mhm.
Um, and bringing it back to the stuff that I had donated about the tintypes. Um, through the generosity of a couple people I have not met in real life up until that moment.
Mhm.
People had reached out saying they had extra camera or extra trays or plate holders and stuff. So that first month, people came through and gave me that stuff. And then I got some chemistry, and a friend of mine helped me build my dark room
Yeah.
that's portable and lives in the back of my Highlander. And about 2 weeks ago, one of my best friends, Margaret, she's my tintype mentor. She lives in Milwaukee.
Okay.
She's the one who taught me how to do tintype in 2021, and she came out for a visit. It's more sort of a moral support visit,
Okay.
and we got my kit my studio set up in the back of my car. We mixed up all the chemistry, and we went back to my property, and we set up the shot, and I took a self portrait in my ashes of my home.
Okay.
And I remember looking at that photo and it just feeling like the gravity of it and the power of it. It felt empowering to see myself standing there and being okay despite my surroundings.
Mhm.
And then also, that was the first time I had poured a plate since December. Um, so I was like jumping back into my art process again. And it felt like a milestone in this healing process. And I thought it would be a really good gift to give my community. So that's when I decided I made a post on the beautiful Altadena Facebook group and I offered it to my neighbors, anyone whose home burned down, that I would wanted to take their portrait in the ashes of their home, which I know is like a sensitive thing to ask because I know a lot of people don't want that. They want to sort of
Everybody's
it's
dealing with it in
too
their own
yeah,
way.
it's really sad and it's
Yeah.
really hard, but I think that for me it offered a little bit of, and I don't even want to say closure because it doesn't feel like I have closure yet, but it offers me a little bit of like this sense that it's real.
Yeah.
Um, because when I'm not there, I just feel like I'm on this extended slumber party at my friend's house, and it takes me actually being going to Altadena and seeing the devastation to remind myself that this really happened. And I think that unless you actually do go there, you will not get a sense of the gravity of it. I think seeing the pictures on the news or online does not do it justice, and I
No.
know that it's not great to I'm not trying to promote tourism to these sites, but in a sense, like, you should go and see it with your own 2 eyes because that's the only way to believe it. It's the most devastating thing I've ever seen in my life.
We went this last weekend, my kids and we went up through Lincoln
Mhm.
because we'd go to the Stumptown there.
Mhm.
And then Lincoln, obviously, you can go all the way up. And when you go up Lincoln, you just start seeing it. And you just see it's crazy. There's places that have just a chimney. And then there's a place next to it that's still there.
Yeah.
It's there is some randomness to some of it that it's just like,
Well, then
why?
once you turn down either Loma Alta or Altadena Drive, you can go blocks and blocks and blocks, and it's just all you see is chimneys standing in ash.
Yeah.
This whole block's gone.
You see the cars that haven't been pulled out yet that are
Mm-hmm.
just melted, and they have some barricades up. It's not like
Yeah.
the Palisades where you have to have that pass to get through.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've gone over there yet, but you have to have a pass to get through certain areas. They're just not letting anybody through. It is. There's different
It's interesting.
worlds
Yeah, I have
in
not
both
gone to the
places.
Palisades at all. I don't really have a connection to that neighborhood other than some friends that I know who's maybe have families, but for me I'm in Altadena. That's
Yeah.
where my heart is, and
Is Daisy still there?
Daisy is still there. Thank
Okay.
goodness.
Because when you were talking about it, it made me think like,
Yeah. So I hope those ladies get back to work at some point.
oh, so they're not open or anything yet?
Oh no, I
No,
don't think they're going to be open for
for a
some
while.
time,
Okay.
but the building is intact.
The photo you were talking about that you took, do you have that?
I don't have the portrait of me with
Mm-hmm.
me, unfortunately, but I brought some of my neighbors that I've taken portraits of.
So the people who have taken you up on that offer, what's
Hmm.
that been like?
Um, it's been really sweet.
Okay.
I would so far I've done about 25 portraits,
Okay.
and a couple of them have been people whose homes are still standing, but I'm doing that too because the devastation is with us all. I think we're all collectively traumatized by this. So,
That's quite a bit. I mean, it's March 13th.
mhm.
Yeah, and everybody's reacting to that's quite a few.
Yeah, it's quite a few. I did that all in the last week. So I
Oh,
just
wow.
started this project like a week ago,
Okay.
and I did all that last week. I'm connecting with neighbors on this deeper level. We're sort of bonded through this. So it's been a really interesting experience where I meet them and we hug and I we get to know each other and I ask them about their experience throughout the night. How did it go down? Whatever they feel comfortable talking to me about. Some of them are really open and their spirits are high and they're really thankful that I'm there and I feel like I'm making a new friend.
Yeah.
Some are a little more solemn, but everybody is, I'm seeing this like beautiful, resilient side of humanity through this. And I'm feeling like I'm staying connected to Altadena, my neighborhood through this. And I just being physically there is bringing me some comfort.
Yeah.
And like making friends still in the neighborhood is bringing me comfort. And then I'm creating this photo for them that is like their first piece of art starting over because I'm giving them the plates. So they're getting this 5x7 photo. And I don't know if you know anything about tintype,
No,
but
educate me. Yeah.
it's the first form of photography, originated in the 1860s.
Okay.
And it's 4 steps of wet chemistry to make one photo on a plate. So I take a plate and I pour collodion on that. And once it's a little tacky, I put it in a dark tank with silver nitrate. And those chemicals create a light sensitive emulsion on the plate that I will then put into a plate holder in the back of my camera. And then I'll expose that by taking my lens cap off
Hmm.
after I compose the shot, expose it, and then go back into my dark room and I pour developer on it and then fixer. So I'm taking and developing the shot on the spot in front of everybody. So they're seeing the process. And then I take the plates home, I rinse them, dry them, scan them, and varnish them. And then I'm either delivering or mailing them out. So it feels really special to give them like this piece of sort of, a farewell in a way, but just sort of seeing themselves standing there. It's kind of just been this profound experience for them to like see the image appearing and then knowing that I'm sort of connected. It's kind of like a bonding experience we're having.
Yeah, because you're not just taking a photo
I'm not just taking a photo.
at
I'm
all.
spending an hour with them. I'm
Yeah.
getting to know their story. We're exchanging phone numbers. I'm like, if you need anything, I'm here for you. Like I'm genuinely care about these people.
Yeah.
And I'm I want them to know that, I'm here for them. I'm like, text me in the middle of the night if you need someone to talk to, if you want to go get lunch or coffee or, you know, I'm really just want to be here for my neighbors right now. It feels like I'm called to be in service of others right now. So
I've
that's
always
why.
been a fan of that, in the service of others. Napoleon Hill talks about that, if you're
Mm,
familiar with any of that side of his work. But when you talk about this, it makes me think what you were talking about, how you're dealing with it, right? Or how you're looking at it.
yeah.
It'll help you reflect if you had those. And because I'm sure a lot of other people have to be thinking about, well, what actually brings me joy? What
Yeah.
is it that's making me happy? What, what purpose or value do I see in my days?
Yeah. And I don't think material possessions bring us joy in the end of the day, but human connection is what life is about. I think that somewhere along the last couple of thousand years we've gotten it wrong and trying to focus on getting money and like building these little private empires that people think they need. But I think that life could be much more simple, and I think we could all be a lot happier if we just, cared about others a little bit more and seeing ourselves in the eyes of a stranger. And, it's a really beautiful thing.
You've also spoke prior to us, actually recording, you said that there's this whole other side of it too where you feel forgotten too. You
Yeah.
want to share, yeah,
Um,
what's
Yeah, that is something that I've been talking about with a lot of people I've taken photos of. It's
Mhm.
sort of been the general consensus where it feels like society is back to normal and everyone is moving on with their lives. And here we are, this group of, thousands of people in this neighborhood who are sort of stuck in this like gut wrenching limbo of everything we've known and loved is gone and now we're all displaced. Some of us are sleeping on couches, some are in motels or at a friend's house or Airbnb. Some have found housing, but we're in this limbo again.
Yeah,
And seeing like our friends going out and going to parties and everyone just sort of acting like this thing didn't happen. And I understand in a way because life does go on,
yeah,
but it's just you'd think there would be more resources out there from the cities, the local government, the national government to help when people are this displaced and traumatized and, you know, not like something just to help us to feel like we're not forgotten about. It's a hard place to be in right now. Um and it's also hard like for a couple weeks I had a hard time being in public. I'd go to
what
the
do you mean? Yeah,
like going to somewhere where I was in a crowd gave me anxiety. Like I'd go to the
interesting.
grocery store and everyone, I'm seeing like people smiling and laughing and I just feel like I can't smile and laugh. I just didn't feel like I couldn't, but I just physically wasn't able to. I just had a really hard time. I remember going to like a Target to like buy underwear and I remember standing and just staring for like 10 minutes and I was like, what am I doing? I just, I was a little bit stuck.
Yeah,
And that was like the first week. The first week was really hard. Um, and things are better now. I feel much stronger. And I also, they're starting this project, I feel like I'm actually empowered a little bit. I think being in Altadena every day for at least 8 hours I'm like desensitized a little bit, but not desensitized in a way where I'm not sensitive to it,
yeah,
but it doesn't when I see it, I'm almost like I want to do something, I have this urge inside to want to help people. I feel like Aaron Brockovich out here. I know these people's names, their address, their story. I
yeah,
know how long they lived in their home. I know what they look like, where they are now. I have these stories ingrained in my head and I want to be there for them. I want to help them.
yeah. I mean, the fact that you can look at it and find motivation to do something positive with purpose. I
Yeah.
mean, that's as silver lining as you can get, right? With the
Yeah.
scenario that you're in.
So I
But
don't know. I don't know what my next steps are or my next move is, but in this moment right now, I've given myself this project that I'm offering to people for
Yeah.
free, and that feels really good.
How
And
do they
it's
reach out to you?
people are reaching out to me via email, Instagram, Facebook.
Okay.
So I put up a little scheduling link on
Like
my
Calendly,
website.
like,
Yeah, like
yeah.
Calendly. So I wasn't using that the first week. And let me tell you, getting 80 emails and trying to organize
Oh,
that. I'm
yeah.
writing stuff down in a little notebook. You know, I it's been difficult. So a friend of mine helped me set up the Calendly,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
that's made
Because
my
I saw
life a
that
lot
on your site.
easier. Yeah.
And it's also on your bio of your LinkedIn or Instagram, right?
Yes, it is.
And your Instagram handle is
At sunshine_acid.
why Sunshine Acid? Just out of curiosity. Does that have to do with the tintype?
No,
Oh,
actually, I've had that Instagram name since 2012
oh,
when I
okay.
very first got an Instagram. And so my mom always told me my whole life she wanted to name me Sunshine Marie.
Okay.
And my mom passed in 2012.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And me and my friend were out. We were like walking around through like an abandoned building and like messing around, maybe spray painting some stuff. And I just wrote Sunshine Acid. And during the 60s, there was an LSD called Sunshine Acid, and at this time, was like my art was very psychedelic,
Okay.
so it was sort of a nod to, commemorating what my mother and what she always wanted to name me, hence why I go by Sunny, and then my, like, psychedelic love of, like, the 70s, 60s, 70s time period, so the name just sort of fit, and I've had that ever since.
Are you close to your mother?
Um In a manner of speaking, my parents split up when I was 6 and I was raised by my dad.
Okay.
I have 4 brothers
Oh, damn.
and my mom struggled with addiction and I didn't see her a lot growing up because of that. But when I became an adult and I moved to college, Milwaukee for college, her and I started having a relationship again, but she struggled on and off for her entire life and she ended up passing um due to like an overdose in 2012. So it was really hard.
Was that in Michigan?
This was
Because I
in
saw that
Wisconsin.
you were originally from Michigan before going to Wisconsin, right?
I No, I actually am from Wisconsin, but I
Oh,
grew up
okay.
on the border
Oh, gotcha.
of
Because I
upper
saw it in your
Michigan.
somewhere, whether it was your website or that Voyage LA article.
Yeah, so I grew up right on the border in
Yeah.
northern Wisconsin, but my family's from Milwaukee. That's where I was born. I was raised up north and then I moved back there for college.
Okay.
So it is a home to me.
Okay.
I lived there for 16 years before I moved to LA.
Good
So,
amount. I mean, that's a lot of development years
yeah.
too.
Yeah, I went through my 20s, my formative years there. So, but yeah, I've had a lot of things happen in my life that
Hmm.
some would say trauma.
Hmm.
For me, they've been like learning and periods of growth and stuff. So, ever since I was a kid, people have been saying, "Wow, you have an old soul." And I think that's what people tell people who've been through trauma. um, so maybe I'm equipped. Nothing can prepare you for losing your home in a fire, but um, I do feel like I have I found some stability right now through my art.
How about
So,
the cats? Do the cats help?
oh,
And are they
yes.
with you?
My kitties are with
Yeah.
me. They are helping immensely. They are my little therapy creatures. They're
What are
so
their
sweet.
names?
Sparrow and Link.
Okay.
Yeah, they're the best.
Because when you said that too, I was wondering, I'm like, okay, I'm like, where are the cats and how are?
Yeah, they'll be by my side forever.
That's awesome. Out of curiosity, do you have a name for your car?
I do.
Because people, because I've driven long distance, I've driven across country, and we would always name our because you spend so much time in them. And if you drive alone, sometimes you'll talk to yourself.
I do. My car
What's the
actually
name of
has
your
a
car?
double name. It's called Toby Taylor,
Okay.
and it's named after two of my dogs that I had in childhood.
Okay. So it's Toby Taylor, the
Hmm.
Highlander. That's so rad. Yeah, we named all our vehicles that we would travel. That's why when you started talking about it the way you talk about it, I'm like, she's got to have a name
Yeah,
for this.
definitely.
Well, where can people go to find out more?
I have a website,
Which is
www.sunshine-acid.com.
okay.
I have an Instagram, sunshine_acid.
And then you have a GoFundMe as well. But that was that started by a friend of yours?
My GoFundMe was started by my friend Margaret.
Okay.
Yeah, bless her heart,
Yeah,
because I
we'll
wouldn't
put
have
the
started
link.
one for myself.
We hear that from those we've been talking with. I mean,
I mean, I
because it's
I
got to
donate
feel
to them all the time, but I was never whoever thinks they're gonna need one.
you never want to be in a position to need
I
one.
hate asking for money. I hate talking about money. I've had money blocks my whole life. I think that's what happens when you grow up poor. Um, you have this lacking mentality, which I'm trying to change because I think part of me thinks that money is kind of made up anyways.
So what is your reality right now as far as like so you're not set dressing or are you? Or is it solely the tintype work?
I'm not working in film currently, but that's only because I haven't been getting offers.
Okay.
Um I've been, if someone were to hit me up and reach out about something, I would consider it. But I guess what's taking precedent in my life right now is this Tensai project. So I'm gonna keep doing it. I am going out of town for a week
Hmm.
because I need a little break. I haven't left LA since the fires. I've taken like a weekend trip,
Hmm.
but I haven't taken like a vacation. And I think I really my brain and my body could use that. Um But other than that, I plan to do this project until I can't no mo, until I have a mental breakdown or something happens. But this is kind of like my self guided mission right now is to do
Hmm.
as many of these as possible to create a body of work that I can either would love to make a book out of this.
Yeah.
Would love some gallery to approach me and say, "We love your work. We would love to show this," because I think it needs to be seen because these images that I've been capturing are like they're deeply moving to me. There's something about the tintype medium that is different than film, digital. These photos look three-dimensional. There's a soul in them. Like there's a story in these photos, and I think that's really special. So I'm sort of hoping that I can find a way to share them on a larger level.
That I mean, the fact that you have enough knowledge to do a story next to each one of the photos, the
Yes,
images.
and I'm also
Yeah.
having people send me before photos too.
Oh, that's really cool.
So I'm hopefully if
No,
I
it's a weird way of putting it. It's really cool. But it's good that you're able to acquire that
yeah,
to add to the story.
yeah, I want to do each whoever wants to be involved, I would love to do before and after photo and then a little write up about their experience. So that's my intention.
Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate you
you.
sharing your time and your story with everything. Um, definitely will follow up. Love to hear how you're doing in 3 months,
Yeah,
6 months, because this is going to be a long process.
it's going to be a long process and there's still a lot of unanswered questions. And
Because you're wanting to stay, you want to go back to or wanting to go back to
well,
Altadena.
that's hard to say. My landlord does want to rebuild,
Uh huh.
but I think it's going to take a couple years. So I need to find something to do until then.
Right.
I'm not going to sit around and wait to go back to Altadena. In fact, it seems like it's kind of toxic there right now.
Okay.
I've been going there every day doing these shoots and I've actually been concerned for my lungs, my breathing health. So I think this week when I go back, I'm going to start using a respirator. Um, Not only the Altadena stuff that's floating around, but I'm working with toxic chemistry. So I need to just be extra safe right now and thinking about my long-term health.
Where do you hope to be? Let's say a year from now. Like, what would be a great
Hmm.
scenario to be in?
That's a great question. I think that would be really nice to have found a house somewhere here. Not necessarily in Altadena, but I love the east side of LA. That's where my community's at. And I would like to have the opportunity to travel around if I'm doing tintype more, maybe to do little pop-ups in different cities. I want to, work on the road a little bit doing this.
Mhm.
I would love to do tintype photojournalism, and I know that sounds kind of crazy because with the news and photojournalism, they want the photo and they want the story now, but I think it's really cool to see natural disasters in this medium. Or not even natural disasters, but just anything. Anything looks cool on tintype. So if
It
I have
does
the
look cool.
opportunity to document things, I feel like documentary photography is kind of calling to me right now. So I'm gonna lean into it until the next thing calls.
Well, thank you again for
Yeah,
sharing your
thank you so
time,
much for
Sunny.
having me. This has
Yeah,
been it's been fun.
good. Well, I'm glad fun, hopefully
It's
somewhat
been nice to share my
cathartic.
story because
Yeah,
I haven't really had the chance to do that, and it's kind of been an honor to be able to do that. So I hope someone maybe can connect to it or relate to it.
that's the hope, right?
Yeah.
That's definitely the hope. Thank you, Sunny.
You're welcome.